Hello, everyone. And first of all, I want to say a big thank you to Tomasz and Dariusz for the great overview of the report, and hoping Dariusz will get well soon. It looks like this. So, but I think this is really great what the two colleagues there prepared and gave us an overview. And yeah, it's a real honor to welcome you all to this panel discussion on the ABSL report. And we all see that it's not only based on the information we got yesterday, overall a really hot topic, how Europe could be more competitive, especially for the service sector, because it's a critical role in shaping the European economy. So before we look now in the findings and the critical things, but also the challenges and the opportunities, I'm not alone here. I want to introduce, first of all, Pegor Papazian. He's a co-founder and chief development officer from Tumo. Great to have you, Pegor. Then Matthias Hartmann, CEO at Techem Group. Marcin, Tchórzewski, I hope I spell it correctly, if not you could train me again, founder and managing director at Helprise, and Carlos Guimarães, VP GBS operations at Adidas. And thanks for having us in Porto, because I know you are here located. It's my first time. I'm really excited and happy to be here. When we look, we know already it's a pivotal moment for all of us here in Europe, and look about the tech advancements, geopolitical shifts involving economic dynamics. And it's for us opportunity, but also a responsibility to drive more innovation and competitiveness. We heard some numbers like 3.47 trillion of Europe's gross value added is a lot of responsibility, and also millions of people across our continent working in the sector. So before I now diving in the discussion and ask the first question, I want to involve you, the audience, and I would like to ask, I'm sure you have all the mobile phones. You were told in the beginning, please put it away and concentrate, but I see here the first, so please give me a chance to highlight again two important numbers, but on the other hand also to get your first opinion. Okay, so I see you answered already the first question. The second, you are much faster. I'm really impressed. So the first is the share of the business service sector from EU 27 in GDP. And two person decided for 8.4. Who is laughing? We come also with a micro later, so you could give your opinion, but I think this is a long time ago when this number was valid. So the most of you is 74 dot on. It's 20.4%. If we go to the next question, how many people are employed across Europe in our business service sector? If we talk about here 40 million talents, and this was maybe misleading and a little bit in the future, but it's at the moment, and based on the report, 38.1 million. So also the majority of you are right. And now I ask for your opinion. What do you think will have the biggest impact on the European business service sector? Gen AI, ESG regulations, talent shortage? Not clear. Some people jump in, out, jump out. Okay. I look at my panel. Somehow like expected, so I was also thinking Gen AI plays a big role. Talent shortage, also close to my nature and where I'm coming from. ESG regulations, maybe a pain point more in some countries, I would say, in some business areas. But great overview so far, so thank you so much for your first vote. We will come back to you once at the end. to start now, after we all are familiar with the report, and I would ask, and I always start with a big number. So 448 million people, representing around 1/6 of the global economy, all in one common market, so Europe. One of the biggest strengths of Europe is its diverse and skilled workforce. Pegor, I'm allowed to ask you first. Yeah. How can Europe further leverage this highly skilled workforce to attract global investors and keep its position as a leading hub for business services in the face of increasing competition from other regions? And I'm referring to APEC, LATAM, but also in some cases Africa.
Well, so as a co-founder of the Tumo Center for Creative Technologies, some of you may know, is we're focused very much on educating teenagers. Almost every question you ask me, my answer is focus on young people. In this case, however, there's a twist, which is that, and I think it's a key component of the strategy in Europe, which is that fertility rates are dropping. They're dropping all over the world, obviously, but in some countries, in some cities where Tumo is establishing centers like Kigali or Bangalore, yes, it's dropping, but it's not noticeable. There's so many young people. But when we go to some Asian countries, like we're in Takasaki, Japan, you hardly see any young people. And it's who are you educating? So the value placed or the significance of education becomes very different if you're working with a very scarce resource. And I think Europe has to get into that mindset of having a very scarce resource that has to be super empowered. And so one of the things that, maybe I would point to three things that flow from this logic. One is that we need to go upstream in terms of the age, really focusing much more on the education system for teenagers. We're very focused on the university level, which is very important. That's where all the value is created, the innovation, the patents, but you have to feed that system. And with the number of young people dropping, it's very important to focus very much on an education system that is what we call consensual. In other words, where students want to learn, they don't do it because they're obliged to, which really increases the effectiveness of teaching. The second thing I would say is the focus in Europe on accreditation is a bit fetishistic. We're too focused on diplomas, certificates, accreditation, whereas the leading companies of the world now are looking directly at what have you done? Let me see your portfolio. Let me see the code you've written. What are you like in the workforce, interpersonal skills, etc. And this is related, obviously, to the first recommendation of looking at the education systems. Education systems have to evolve so that they're more focused on the result, showing what you've done, project-based, outcome-based teaching, rather than teaching to the diploma. I think we all agree on that, but I think we also have to agree that that's not the case right now. We're very focused on accreditation. And the third thing, maybe the most important one, is to realize that while the number of humans is decreasing, not just because of falling fertility rates, but also because we're very negative on immigration these days as a whole. Politically, there's a shift towards not accepting as many. That's another source of humans that's going to dry up. And at the same time, if you look at all the projections, the number of robots is rising. Robots, both in the sense of the physical science fiction-y robots, the bipedal humanoid robots, there's projections that within a decade we'll have almost 1 billion of those. But if you look at the AI agents, the virtual robots, that number is, I'm sure, within a couple of years, as Mark Zuckerberg recently said, I agree with him, it's going to surpass the number of humans. And so this increase of AI agents, coupled with the decrease of humans, I think leads to an obvious conclusion, which is that educating kids on being super users of AI is the most important thing that we can do right now on the short term. And it's fairly easy to do. The major impediment there that we're seeing, and at the Tumo Center we're actively kind of pushing back against that, is a very defensive approach towards AI. Yes, it's full of dangers, bias, intellectual property issues, etc., deep fakes, misinformation. But if the reaction to that is to kind of protect kids from AI, we'll do a disservice to society, and especially the most underprivileged kids will be the most at a disadvantage. So I think we need to be very proactive about not focusing on engineers only who create AI, but super users of AI across all fields, from graphic design to coding to accounting. So those are the 3 recommendations I would have, very much from the perspective of Tumo.
Super, thanks for sharing. And I feel how ambition and emotions behind this topic are improving also young people. And I think this is really good to hear. And thanks for sharing this. I would like to stay a moment on how competitive Europe is. And Marcin, the question for you. I start with a number. 0.3% was the GDP growth of EU in Q2 2024. At the same time, the US economy was growing by 3% and China by 4.7%. Not sure how this is developing now, but it's not the time to guess about this today. How can the European business service sector contribute to a stronger Europe and create long-term growth model, especially considering cultural proximity, shared languages, and time zone alignment? So more related to our business.
I think what was interesting for me that today's conference started with a description and an introduction of what this sector is. That it's even a sector, something that I think has only been recognized thanks to ABSL that named it as a sector. When I talk to friends and colleagues, in the US or in other Western European countries, I am from Poland, and I talk about GBS and business services sector, they look at me as like, what are you talking about? You're talking about, finance functions or operations or procurement that is just being done by the company A, B, C, and D. They are in the sector of what they do. So I think, we haven't really recognized, and I'm very happy that this event is happening, to try to name it as a sector, first and foremost. Because what we have developed as a sector are competencies that were very rare or not even required or needed in those organizations in the past until processes and the process thinking and centralization and optimization and transformation started to happen. We're talking about AI. AI would not have been possible, or automation, to deliver the results that it's able to deliver had the companies not centralized their processes and operations in the GBS centers. I think Europe has an amazing opportunity, and I want to refer back to the previous question as well. How can we compete with APEC and Latin and South America, which is primarily a cost driver for companies that is less expensive than Europe? But let's not forget that Europe has had one of the most established corporations and businesses for years. So we are very close as GBS centers to those businesses. We visit them physically more often than our Indian colleagues coming here to understand what we do and how the business is growing, what is needed from the business perspective. So that understanding, the proximity, the cultural understanding, helps us drive more value as an industry. So yes, we're not going to be able to compete cost-wise with other countries, but do we have to? Getting back to what you mentioned about AI and getting the skill set ready to be able to implement and manage that technology may make the decision of going to other countries that are less expensive obsolete. Maybe it's not needed. Let's invest in the competencies of the future versus trying to chase the cost savings of today. That is something that I think is going to help Europe grow. And also getting back to defining and naming the sector. What I see already is the skill set and the roles and the knowledge that was created because of the sector now translates into companies that don't know about GBS, don't have shared services, but they struggle with efficiency, they struggle with process mindset to be able to drive value and deliver the products and the services in the most effective and efficient way to their customers. So that skill set is another strength that we have in Europe because we have been close to the business, we have developed shared services and business services that then can work with mid-sized, smaller companies and become professional services sector like consulting is today.
Okay. Thanks for sharing, Marcin. And I think it's really interesting that you say it's not all about cost, right? So it's also about building center of expertise and see that also this GBS or service sector purpose is changing. Carlos, I want to talk a little bit about cost and regulation. So the number is 2.4% was the annual inflation rate of EU in August 2024, down from 5.9 the year before. Given the rising labor cost in Europe and potential restriction from the ESG regulations, how can European business remain globally competitive without compromising the long-term sustainability and also the focus on innovation?
Okay, good. So thank you for the question. First of all, I want to thank Jacek and Christian, because today we just signed the ABSL Portugal, so we're part of the family. I want to thank everyone for that. Thank you. Everyone that contributed for that, so thank you so much for that. Welcome to Porto. It's a very special place here for me, Alfândega, because my grandfather 40 years ago had a bicycle shop in front of Alfândega, where he would sell bicycles and also would fix them. Yeah. So very, very emotional for me to be here as well. Going back to your question, I think 2 or 3 angles that I think are important for Europe to continue to be competitive. I think the first one is we need to double up on investment on innovation. I think when we talk about AI, when we talk about education, when we talk about making sure that our talents have everything that they need to grow, I think Europe needs really to look further on the innovation and the investment that is being done because it's not enough. And we see that other countries are contributing much more and that we are lagging instead of leading like we've done for many, many years. The other aspect for me is regulation. You've talked a little bit. I think we strangle our businesses with regulations that may seem in our, let's say, Maslow pyramid very important, but they strangle and don't allow our business to move forward. And with competition in other markets like China and US, we are again lagging and not leading. And I think Europe needs to start leading from that sense. And I think that the third aspect is we need to create further partnerships as a European market. And now with the elections in US, we will have probably with the President Trump a much more focused in America economy. In China, we know that they are much more focused in their own country, and I think Europe needs to have this mindset because globally we are lagging and losing the game.
Okay, thanks for sharing. And also the beginning, so I will remember, definitely, yeah? So the bicycle shop in Porto, but also the other part about the regulation. Thank you. I have at the, also to put a highlight again on the investment gap. Matthias, big number, 270 billions is the innovation gap between Europe and US in the time from 2008 to 2021. Another furthermore factor is that 30%, this we learned from the report, of the unicorns founded in Europe reallocated their headquarters abroad, and the majority was moving to US. How can a European government prevent further talent and company relocation to other regions? Maybe you could not answer completely for the government, but give it a try.
Yeah, well, I will try to think through their lens as well. So I think a lot has to do how we fund and increase the access to capital for the innovators on this continent. That includes not only startups, but specifically the scale-ups. Because indeed, with our ground research, we seem to be able to put a lot of innovation to the table, but we never really get it to scale at a global level. And then we lose them. So it's not that the EU did not try to fund through EIF or EIC to put funds in place. But while I'm not a startup in my company, Techem, anymore, let me give a very concrete, up-to-date example just from 4 weeks ago. We are a German-based company with a presence in 18 countries in Europe. We do energy services for real estate companies, residential or office spaces and so on. And we help them to increase their energy efficiency and use less energy and thus drive down CO2. We do this through an IoT and digital metering type of approach. Now, for the third time in a row, this company has been in the hands of private investors, of private equity. And up until just 4 weeks ago, there was a Swiss engagement in us together with 2 Canadian pension funds. And they sold the company just for 6.7 billion 4 weeks ago to the next investors. And guess what? It's an American investor, a Texas Pacific group from the West Coast, together with a sovereign fund from Singapore. Now, why am I saying that? A lot of pension money from those countries flows into good investments of, in that regard, green tech companies like ours. TPG has put together 20 billion in their funds to invest in green tech, and one of their main focus areas is Europe. They see the innovation around green technologies coming from Europe, and they want to help expanding it. So my question, my simple question in the process with a twinkle in my eyes was, but where's the German pension organization? Why aren't they investing in us? And the answer is very simple. Most of the European countries in the EU have no vehicle for their pension money to be invested in good and growing and financially strong enterprises. So I have helped in the last 6 years all the pensioners from Ontario and from Quebec in Canada to have a better income. Why aren't we doing this for our European citizens? Thus, not only do we not spend this money wisely, but we attract investments from other countries and other markets. And then, of course, the barrier to take a business abroad and to help it develop outside of Europe obviously is a given. So I think we need to develop more secondary markets for equity in Europe. I think we need a different attitude to invest in scaling enterprises. I think you mentioned already the need for harmonization and less regulation. I think also in our business services angles, moving from country to country in a common market in Europe is no fun. It's still a burden. I still have to get my documentation for a business travel to Portugal. Why on earth is that necessary? I think we've just gotten yesterday the biggest final wake-up call from the election in the US. I think this is the last call for Europe to finally get its act together, to really create a common market, to really have a common financial system, and to overcome very smallish approaches. And I do remember, I think it was a Belgian prime minister who said, Europe is made up of 2 types of countries. The small countries and those countries that have not recognized yet that they are small. So we have to get to the notion that this is a big market and we should behave like one. And once we do, I think we will overcome a lot of that. And then I think it's a lot of simple logic. Why don't we better incentivize the R&D in this continent? Why don't we really have a much more outcome-based tax policy to focus on what really counts and matters? So I think a lot is really self-inflicted, and this continent should stop to whine and complain about the threats of the world. This continent should finally take its own shovel, grab it, and let's dig a way out of the hole that we have produced on ourselves. So I think it's all written up. There is no lack of understanding what needs to get done. We should be prouder Europeans, and we should take our fate in our own hands.
Great. Matthias, thank you so much for the call to action. Yeah, and I think it is really cool that we have the report also from a viewpoint of whole Europe. Yeah, this is new how to look to the business service sector and makes us hopefully even stronger in the future. And I take also your advice to the German government, yeah, if they listen to me, but I tried. Yeah, not start now. Yeah, so.
If I may add one thing, because I 100% agree with access to capital and funding. We just got back a few months ago from the New York FinTech Week. I mean, the money is like everywhere. You just go there and they're waiting for you to give you the cash for good investments, unlike in Europe. But on the positive note, doesn't matter if these are unicorns or unicorns to be from Europe migrating to the US or the American ones, they still tap into talent that is in Europe. They recognize that we have the competencies, they recognize that through business services we have developed the skill set that may not be in the US as much because they would have gone to India and other places. And they want to have that kind of better cultural fit. So as a sector, we can continue to benefit from that, but in a much more flexible way. So remote work and some of the very successful companies that we know are remote-only companies. Why come back to the office? Do we have real talent if we need to physically manage that talent? Or these are just employees? Do we have the right leadership to be able to provide that service remotely? Do we need to have a big hub in one location where everybody is competing for the same talent? Or can we have fragmented organization with multiple locations and talent on demand? So that agility and flexibility with the talent that we have to service those unicorns, doesn't matter where they are, is an opportunity for the sector.
Thank you so much, Marcin. Before I come to a last question to all of us in the room, no, excluding me, to all of you in the room, I would give the audience the possibility, if there is one comment, open question, someone here in the first, do we have a micro? Okay.
Hi, Janusz Dziurzyński. I have a pleasure to lead ABSL in Poland. Question to all of you. If we would take back time 20 years back, this sector was barely existing. In fact, the people in the room, all the great leaders, we created that. So kudos to you guys, kudos to us. However, looking forwards, what needs to be true for us, for the same people, and for the next generation of leaders, because circumstances have changed dramatically, right? After everything you said. What needs to be true for us to wake up 20 years from now? Okay, 5 years from now, 10 years from now. For us to be 20 years is a bit overstretched. 10 years for us to look back and say, hey, we did something good, and we achieved what we wouldn't think it was possible to achieve. Because I tell you, if you ask me, Jacek, or whoever, 20 years ago, we wouldn't dream about where we are today. But we are here. So question is, what needs to happen? What is the call to action for leaders of this sector, to take the completely new horizons? Thank you.
Thank you so much. Want to answer?
It was specifically asked for a very long time to give them time to think, yeah?
So maybe this goes a little bit into the last question, but there's two angles also that I would like to think about. First is, I think we need to develop our youth and our new talents into, to make sure that we are going where we want to go. I think there's sometimes a lot of mistrust in the new generations, and I think we need to think in the other way around. I think we need to close that gap, support them, and make sure that they have everything that they need to become better. Because I have no doubt that they will be much more prepared than we were in the past, but I think they need a little bit of that push. The second one is around leadership. Yeah? When I look at the world today, I don't really see a very inspirational leader anywhere. And I think the people in this room that are leaders and that are leading teams in very large organizations have a duty and the privilege to make it different in the future. Because we need strong leaders in the world. And talking about Europe, we need them also charismatic to give good hope to people and make sure that we are progressing. And then in 20 years, we are proud about creating these new leaders.
I would like to add and build upon it because it has a lot to do with education. We heard a lot about education, but we need to get the future much more tech-savvy than we are today. And it feels to me that we, specifically in Europe, are being driven by angst too much. If I look at the Data Act, if I look into the AI Act, we see to the negative side of life. And of course, I think we have good values that we can bring forward in order to shield the risk of bias in AI and make AI a positive thing. But that needs education. It needs education, and building on that, it needs skill and leadership in order to drive it and to open it up. So I think tech will play a much bigger role than it did when we all recall, like 30 years ago, when we started business services, how analog the world was. And I think today we just have a big opportunity, and we should embrace it with a spirit of hope and future instead of too much angst and too much regulation against it.
Yes, I think that organizations need to build their internal AI capabilities much more quickly than we currently are. So, for example, at Tumo, which is a small company, we have these OKRs, the objectives that we review on a quarterly basis. We added a special line item called AI integration, where we ask each manager and each employee, what are you personally doing to improve your own AI skills? And we're going to track that quarter to quarter, because it can be kind of intimidating, and many people, including us leaders, we don't take enough advantage of it. So in addition to educating teenagers, which is what I usually talk about, now I'm talking about educating the workforce very proactively in a very accelerated timeline, because things are moving fast.
I think from my perspective, again, when we talk about GBS, when we talk business services, when we talk about the sector, on the one hand, it's better integration with the business. The whole sector was created by just, little centers being set up, and these guys are doing accounting or transactional processing. But as we have evolved, we're getting closer and closer. And as we spoke, during the break, you're no longer a center. You're Adidas Portugal. Yet another office with business functions, working together with business functions, in the headquarters, and so on and so on. The second thing, as I spoke before, is the recognition that, yes, there is a uniqueness in what we do, and yes, it is a sector, and these are, specific competencies that we have that we can drive change and transformation to the existing businesses that we have, but also to the ones that have not even heard that we exist.
Thank you so much. I hope this answered the question. And it's interesting, you bridged it, because it would be also my last question to you, but respect to the time. I would say I want to highlight, like I said, all leaders are in the room, and it's about our responsibility and how we want to shape the future. And you asked more concrete how we want to look back in 10 years, 5 years. I want to understand, and this is a question to the audience, what will be the role that you take on to strengthen and to make the European business service sector more competitive? So if you think in the next weeks, going back to your offices and where you see your leadership role and responsibility. I not see that. Oh. Okay. Are there more people in the room? Don't be shy. Innovator and strategist. There's no strategist not in it. And I would like to ask one of the panelists, when we have the result, to give an opinion if this is like expected. It's, I think, a strategist. It's more or less leading. So executor and disruptor I was already expecting, advocate, so yeah, but strategist is. When I speak, then I could also push it. No. Who want to take it? Matthias, Carlos?
Well, if I look at the picture, there's pretty much nearly an equal distribution. My view would be, if you aim to be a leader, you have to be all of the other stuff in one person. So I think these are not mutually exclusive. I think if I want to take one point out of this is, I think leaders in Europe, specifically, whether in our sector or in others, became too silent. Leadership in businesses became too politically correct, didn't dare to speak up anymore. And I think these days are over. I think we are living in a multipolar world where people need orientation. And there is disinformation and disorientation coming every day through social media, fake news, and what have you. So I think we have to take, again, a more active role in stepping up and making our values and the interests of our people that work for us clear again. Thus, leadership for me has to do that we have to give them a true north. We have to give them the right kind of direction in order to be really leading the pack. And I think it's up to business leaders to step up again and make themselves heard.
Yeah, thank you so much, and also for the call to action. So, and a big thank you to you all, yeah, and also to the audience, because you participated in these results. I have to say, I would love to see that we all stay more together as a European and bring us in a more competition, always in a global balanced way, because we should be supporter of the transformation in the next years. And we could not answer everything. Yeah, this was not where we were aiming for, but I hope, based on we have all different roles, different views on this topic, but we could give some food for thought for all of you. And thank you so much.
Thank you.